Welcome to Hitting the Mark, the podcast where we cut through the noise and get real about what it actually takes to start, run, and grow a business. Let's get into it. This is Hitting the Mark. Welcome back to Hitting the Mark. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Stefanee Clontz, Director of Operations for Hydra Plus.
How's it going?
She's also the host of Does This Podcast Make Me Sound Fat? And if I dare say it, a powerhouse in the anti-aging and wellness industry.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're shooting podcasts over here, so this is just part of the Thursday schedule.
Exactly. Well, that's wonderful. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of that schedule to have the conversation with us today and discussing a little bit about business operations, how things run, decisions that are getting made. Our mission here is that we take all the fluff and kind of ancillary information away from being an entrepreneur, running a business, and we talk about the hard choices, the big win, and tough lessons that define success. So I know that you have worked very, very hard over your career to get to where you are today, and I'm very excited to hear about your adventure with Hydra Plus and talk about a little of the day-to-day for operations and what that means to you.
Okay, well, I've been with Hydra Plus for 2-ish years, going on 3. September will be 3 years. Okay, so when I started, we were 3 IV hydration clinics, only offering IV hydration and vitamin injections. And I was brought onto the team to incorporate medical weight loss. So, this whole Ozempic GLP-1 craze, testosterone replacement for men and women, the Botox, cosmetic injectables, dermal fillers, and then also the spa side of it. So facials and body contouring and that sort of thing. Because we didn't have any of that, basically the stores were already open and running and we'd have existing IV hydration members. So it was a little bit of a challenge at first because you've got to get the word out there that now we're one-stop shop wellness, right?
It's almost like a complete pivot where you're changing. It's essentially starting a new business.
It was. And so, I come here guns blazing and I'm so confident that I can just make all this stuff happen. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if I fail, right? We all think that whenever you're starting a new business or you're joining a new operation. And so I think we started with, just like the low-hanging fruit, marketed to the IV hydration clinics first. And slowly they started converting to weight loss clients, into testosterone patients, and started offering blood work on site and that sort of thing. If you're not willing to grind, it will not be worth the journey.
Yeah, sure. We talk about that a lot.
Yes.
It is a grind. And, you bring up self-doubt almost immediately. It's kind of, we talked about it on the last episode of, entrepreneurs, business owners, people who are running day-to-day operations of business typically will have 2 different emotions. That's euphoria and terror. Yeah. And it's like, you kind of pick one. There's no option in between there. But, cool. Well, that's great background in kind of where you're at right now. Let's take a moment and get to know you a little bit better. I'm going to ask you a few questions in terms of how you are operating on a day-to-day basis. So are you ready?
Go.
Okay. Morning routine, would you say it's structured or chaos?
Structured chaos, is that an option?
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
The intention is to wake up at a certain hour and get all of these things done before getting out the door. And maybe get half of them done. As long as I can get my kids to school and, get my MacBook, it's a win.
Right.
The rest of it, we really can't predict how the day is going to go.
No.
You'll have staff come in or call out sick. The internet's out. They cut off the water at one of our locations. The alarms are going off at the other store. So if you can just get out the door and make it into one of the locations, that's the win.
That is the win. That is the win. And then you might have to switch and pivot and go to another location as soon as you walk in that first location.
I've done that several times, yes. So always leave the house with the full tank of gas.
So you have to have that structured chaos for sure.
I do, honestly, yes.
Ability to be malleable in your decision making before 8 a.m. How about that?
I used to have this really hardcore caffeine addiction, and then I switched to mushroom coffee. And now, if I don't have caffeine before I walk out the door, I can still make sound decisions. Is that
Okay.
fair?
Yeah. Did you switch to mushroom coffee for the cognitive ability and effects?
I was reading about all of this stuff. It's great for cognition. It's great for, getting rid of a caffeine addiction. It has so many, benefits. So I switched to it and I haven't gone back. And what I do like about that is when I travel, how you're always looking for coffee first thing in the morning. Like you can't do anything and especially there's not a coffee maker in the room. I don't have to be that way anymore. And I like not being chained to the coffee maker. If I just want to get up and go, then I can.
Interesting. All right, cool. What's your favorite guilty business book, guilty pleasure business book?
The Tipping Point?
Okay.
It's been a long time since I read that, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Of course.
I think everyone who majored in business in college, that's like the go-to book. But I like hearing the stories about how it wasn't Hardee's, it was Carl's Jr., how Carl's Jr. started. And there was a shoe company in there too, that it just talked about how it evolved from like a hot dog stand into, a huge franchise today. Not the shoe place.
Yeah. No, and I mean, there's so many companies that do that you don't even realize. And you're in the process of that for yourself right now and in changing what Hydra Plus was to what Hydra Plus is now. You got to make those integral pivots. And like we were saying, it's almost like you started a new business because you might be offering some of the same general services, but you have the next level or beyond. And, having the ability to kind of have stories like that in the back of your mind are great because it adds like a little bit of benefit. Mine is definitely 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's a great book. What's a common myth about running a business that drives you crazy?
That if you have money that you can make it work. And I've worked in like med spa franchising before. And so, a lot of people who become franchisees is because they have money that they want to invest in it somewhere. But the thing of it is, if you have money and you're not willing to put in the effort, you've got to have someone who's your eyes and ears, who's going to be in that venture with you or in your corner. Because just because you have the financial ability to does not mean you've got the business acumen to make it take off.
Sure.
Huge myth.
No, that's amazing. That's a really good point. And I have worked in franchise organizations as well that, if you're just trying to build a franchise, you can do that, but you got to look at the longevity of whether or not those franchises will be successful as well as you're building them out.
Well, and you can't look at it as something that you just put money into and you're not there. If you're an absentee franchisee, it will show.
Yeah, sure. That's a good point. And also, like, if you're just doing it for that, you're going to have to hire somebody anyway that's going to take probably the majority of your profits to run the business anyway.
That's true, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
Looking at maybe, I'd say 15 months before you break even, and that's ambitious.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, good. What's the most app used on your phone?
Instagram, I guess. Instagram and WhatsApp. So WhatsApp for communicating with everybody because you can share files at much better quality that way, right? And, we have a lot of international contacts, our virtual assistant, and we've got somebody building us a website in Nigeria, and my husband travels internationally for work all the time. So my WhatsApp and my Instagram are always open. Instagram is most frequently used because that's what we use the most here for growing our business. We have the most visibility on our Instagram when we're trying to grow our following. It's through Instagram. Any marketing investments we make is for Instagram. So we're on there a lot, and you'll see why, because it's such a powerful social media platform.
I think, your vertical, your business actually ties so well with fashion and just the beauty industry. And Instagram really initially was brought out as a way to showcase pictures and things along that line. So there's a strong tie-in to why that would make a lot of sense for you, for sure. What's the hardest decision you've had to make as a business leader?
When you have to terminate somebody.
Yeah.
That is the hardest part. I wasn't even good at it until maybe a year of being here is really when you have to sever ties for somebody for the better of the company.
Yeah. So let me pull on that thread for a second.
Okay.
When you are forced to terminate somebody, how do you prefer to do it? In sense of, it's like the hardest thing any business owner has to do. Is there a way that you can kind of where applicable, allow the employee to kind of keep their dignity, keep their reputation, or what is the best way that you found to do it?
Yeah, I think you can absolutely do that and just go separate ways as long as you guys don't trash each other. You know what I mean? So if there was like no malice there, one of our former employees that was a friend of mine for 7 years and, and had to let him go, and I don't wish him any ill will. So I will, be a reference for you. I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be honest. The reason why you're not working with us any longer, which I don't think we're allowed to disclose. I'm saying I won't lie for you, but I will. I mean, I believe in amicable breakups 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to, again, where applicable, if somebody just does something that's outright terminable.
We've had that happen too.
There's not a lot you can do for them.
Yeah.
But
that's tough to come back from. That's like forgiving someone who cheated on you, right? That's tough to come back from.
It is. It's a fair analogy too, because most of the time when we're running businesses, it seems like it's our relationship, our family. It's my relationship with my business is probably the fourth most important relationship behind my wife and my 2 kids.
I always tell people we spend more time at work than we do with our families during the week. So I always prided myself on making this a place of solace for not just the clients, but for the staff, that whenever they come in, we get excited that we're working a shift together, right? Or every Thursday here at our Buckhead location, we always buy lunch together. And it's just our Thursday thing. And a lot of us go out together when we're not at work. So it's like we all enjoy each other's company. And that's the kind of culture that I have so wanted for everyone all the time.
Yeah. Culture's key. I mean, it really is. And to your point, and wrapping that back to the original question, if you have the right culture, I think when the time that you need to part ways with an employee comes, it just makes that whole scenario so much better for both people too.
I don't know who it was who said it, but one of my favorite quotes about leading is that you should always take care of the people who take care of the people. And so big on, getting great swag for us to wear. That's why we're always, dressed very well in actually outfits that we like. Imagine if we had to wear the brown UPS uniforms. That would be so miserable. We do company outings. I try to book them quarterly. Staff dinners, we do gift exchanges, but always try to keep them engaged. Do gift cards for, the holidays and, birthday lunches when the staff have to work on their birthday. But, you should like where you work.
Yeah. Especially if you own it or are managing it or running it. So that's one of those key things. And we don't always like it. That's true, but you gotta know that you're doing the right thing by the right people. And I think you hit the point right there on the head of, you take care of your people, they're going to take care of you. And then that will also, again, bringing it back to the question, will minimize the amount of times that you have to part ways with employees.
I know.
Culture's
it's always
there.
The most dreaded part of my job.
What was the one piece of advice you wish you would have received prior to getting into a role of operations and management and overall decision-making for the well-being of a company?
This is what I worked for a doctor when I was 28. Don't do the math. I'm old. And he told me that he was telling his dad about his dilemma that, all of his fellow residents or coworkers or something at the time, weren't doing as much as he was doing. And his dad said, without them, you are them. And I think that if I would have known that when I was younger, that's what creates the divide. And so keep going. If they're not doing as much as you, that's okay, because that's what separates us from them.
Yeah.
And to keep going.
That's 1,000%. That is a phenomenal quote. Without them, you are them. That is great. And
yeah, think about that for a minute, right? So you get angry at, the people who are cooking your burger at fast food restaurant, or you get angry at, people who are, whatever, not performing the way you would, but without them, you're just like that too.
Yeah.
That's what helps you stand out.
I think a caveat to that too, I try and keep up with Gary Vaynerchuk as much as I can. Gary V, I don't know if you follow him on any of his platforms, but he's great.
I will.
He's phenomenal. Great business advice, great just personal advice. And one of the things that he always says is that your employees will never work as hard as you because they don't have to. They don't want to. It's your company. You're always going to work harder than anybody that you ever employ. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
Sure.
So, they've
always said that.
Yeah.
They will never run it like you would. So that's why it's important to be there, to be present, to be involved. Unless you find a leprechaun, because it's so rare to find somebody and it's like, you know what? I mean, I feel like I am that way because this is my passion. But unless you find somebody like that, if you own a business, you got to be in the trenches.
Yeah.
At least in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's a constant struggle of figuring out how you can work on the business and not in the business. So
that's true.
Maybe that's something.
And the things that I've done in starting in this industry, I look back on it now, and I was flyering cars for weight loss. This was HCG weight loss at the time. I was working at bridal shows, trying to get people to come in before their wedding to lose weight. I would go to health fairs and try and drum up patients that way. We would go to like the Orkin headquarters and, whatever, the MARTA employees, all of those kinds of things. And I think that after you figure out what works, then now I can work a lot smarter.
Yeah.
Than harder.
No, you get the perspective. Time gives you perspective.
True.
On that note, let's go to our I have such a hard time. Easy for me to say.
Say it 10 times fast.
First segment. Let's go to our signature segment. So let me ask you, what was the worst piece of advice, the worst piece of business advice that you've ever received, and how did ignoring it benefit you?
So I'm glad that you forewarned me about this little segment here. I don't think this is a piece of advice I've received. I think this is just a piece of advice that people say because it's real cliche. But that whole, if you build it, they will come, that is not 100% true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there were times, I had a position in medical weight loss franchising 10 plus years ago, and they would send me to all of the med spa franchises. And it's kind of like Restaurant Impossible, right? So I would go in there and say, oh, well, your decorations are wrong and you don't have enough natural light and your marketing is incorrect and things like that. So what I was finding about these franchisees, and you'll see it on that, what is that bar show? That it's the same thing, right? Same concept where a consultant goes in and tells you why your business is failing.
Yeah.
It's the whole, they built it and they turn on the lights and unlock the doors and they're like, well, where are the patients? And that's not how that works at all.
And coincidentally, it pretty much doesn't it doesn't work that way in most industries, save maybe casinos.
Okay.
I think it may work for them.
That's because you're catering to people's addictions. That's totally different.
It's a fair point. Well, cool. That's actually a really good response. And, as you look at it, because I think as you have ideas or as people think, oh, I'm going to start this business, I've got this idea, I want to make this happen. You just assume that your idea is the best idea since sliced bread.
Sure.
Once you actually get it up and running, it's just going to work. And I deal with a lot of new business owners or people who are starting to think about building out a business, and I help structure them out. And that's kind of one thing that I talk about. It's like, okay, cool. Like you've got this animal that you've created. Well, how are you going to get people to it? What's the next step? How are you going to get out there? Because generally speaking, people aren't looking for you,
Right.
Mm-hmm. Again, unless it's a casino, in which case lots of people are looking for that.
Or a crack house.
Yeah.
So you're going to put yourself out there. You have to build brand recognition. You have to spend on marketing. There's lots of people who open businesses and, for lack of better words, they shoot their wad on interior decorations and on, making everything plush, right? And paying themselves a hefty salary, and they had zero marketing budget, right? And so now for your customers.
I think as a business owner or somebody who's starting an entity, the idea of a salary is very funny.
Isn't
Knowing what you get into, and as you're putting this all out here, it's like, yeah, I remember those were nice. You got to think about everything else before you think about yourself.
That's true.
And
you're the last to get paid. You're the last to have a day off. You're the last to leave the office.
Yeah.
Always first to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my old bosses back when I used to sell heavy duty machinery, he always said, and when he said it at the time, he used to annoy the hell out of me. But he's a great guy and taught me a lot. But he always said, Dustin, the speed of the leader's the speed of the pack. Real Southern guy. And he's not wrong. every
Yeah.
day. Speed of the leader, Dustin, speed of the leader. And I've kind of carried it
I like
forward.
that analogy because I was just in Alaska a couple months ago dog sledding, and it makes total sense.
Yeah. Well, that's why they put the fast ones up front, fair enough.
The biggest and heaviest ones are in the back.
They need to come see you. Do they have Ozempic for dogs?
Sure they do. They've got Prozac for animals.
Fair. All right, good.
Yeah.
I think we might have just found a new vertical for you, too. I can help you with
Good,
it.
because it's time to pivot. The weight loss is up and running. IV hydration is up and running. So I was actually looking for other things. So I think we're going to do GLP-1 drugs for animals, and we've found a new market to capture.
Do you think it would be more apropos on dogs or cats? Because I feel like cats are a little bit more self-conscious about their bodies. I've known a lot of dogs.
They're a lot more sedentary, too. So,
yeah,
I mean, maybe we target the cats first.
Well, that's a really great segue into our next segment. We're going to talk about scaling secrets.
Scaling secrets, talking
about taking a business and looking toward the future on a 1, 3, 5-year plan, figuring out what the direction is and how you're going to grow from your current position to where you ultimately will see it in your mind. So as you're going through that, we talked a little bit about when you came into Hydra Plus and how you essentially were built into this pre-existing business with the idea of wanting to grow. 3 locations for a high-end health spa is a lot.
That's a big project.
Yeah. So as you look to the future there, what are your biggest concerns about adding on locations or adding on services? Do you focus maybe on like the service side of things, like, Ozempic for dogs, or are we looking more towards figuring out how we can service more clients in various different locations?
I think my biggest concern is being able to staff all of the locations efficiently, right? So, I mean, we know that there's a big staffing conundrum going on right now. I think because of the whole COVID pandemic where employers discovered that people could work from home, and now nobody wants to work from an office, and we can't start IVs from our living rooms with people who are in the med spas, right? So that's my first concern. I think that the second one is just is compliance. So, I don't foresee this becoming a franchise. I actually think that these will all be like corporate stores, but they are also medical. So the thing of it is that, when you have a medical component, you're dealing with somebody's health, you're dealing with somebody's life, essentially. We don't have any lethal drugs here. But so making sure that everybody is following the correct protocols for even adding vitamins in a bag or dosing weight loss medications. So that can be a little bit scary because, with the 3 locations that we have now, I'm only in one each day of the week. So a year from now, like you said, 1, 3, 5, a year from now, we should have a 4th location. 3 years from now, we should have at least 6. Then at the 6th location mark, and this is, taken from Shark Tank, if you want to fact check me, so you want to have 6 successful med spas or whatever businesses, right, in the same market before you decide to franchise. A lot of people don't do that, by the way.
Interesting.
Have you noticed?
When I go back and I look at the people that, like, I've got clients who are franchise organizations, and then I have, people that I've worked with that are franchise organizations. If I take that information, I look at the people who were successful, you're not wrong. I think that, if you have 2 different locations or, maybe something that you want to try and move into another city and just see how it works there, you're just taking a bigger risk because you don't have the data. You don't have the existing data to know whether or not certain things were an anomaly for a location or if it was just a generalized positive for each one of those businesses. So I could see why that would make a lot of sense. I'm going to fact check you, though. I'm going.
You should totally do that. But because what happens is, what I see with a lot of people, and especially in the med spa industry, is that whenever they have one good location, they're like, franchise it. And then little by little, the brand gets destroyed. So it's got to make sure that everything is buttoned up, that, and I told you about this earlier, we're working on this giant binder of everything that goes on here, from the time the phone rings to when somebody walks in the door, what happens when they leave, how do we follow up with them, How do we market to them? All of that stuff is going to be in that binder before we open our doors for a fourth location. We've got to be able to replicate everything the same way, like the Zaxby's model, right? You can go to any Zaxby's in the country and it's going to look exactly the same and the service is going to be the same.
The food's going to be terrible.
I don't eat at Zaxby's, so.
It's terrible. But to your point, yes. And what you're talking about is brand identity and, brand consistency across locations or across offerings. And that is so key because the consistency and the experience of going into one location or another, if you do not keep track of that, I currently have a client that has 25 locations and their consistency is all over the place. They have no communication. There's no ability to understand what's going on amongst those different franchisees, and building that out has caused strife. They're taking all the right steps. They're doing all the right things that they need to. And I'm fully expecting this to be run like a very tight ship in a short period of time. But what happens is you can kind of lose sight of these things as you're going down that path. And to your point, if you don't have 6 locations or businesses or spaces that are all consistently run in a consistent experience, then getting past that hump or moving into that next level where you're not even in the same state as that location.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
especially if you're not in the same state. Yes.
Yeah. So that's really good. Well, I think those are amazing insights on scaling. The next segment that we talk about is called the market edge. And this is where we talk about what you're doing to stay ahead of competition in a very competitive space. Med spas, health spas, there are a lot that are popping up. So what's one trend in the industry that you're paying attention to right now?
I mean, whatever I think about, I'm like, we're doing that. We're following whatever Kim Kardashian is doing. Honestly, we just got the kits in for the salmon sperm facials. Whatever she talks about is she's got the Oprah touch, right? So when she was on to the vampire facial, she made that very famous. And so now we've got the salmon sperm kits. And usually if there's something else, I was thinking about taking it.
I'm sorry. Did you say salmon sperm?
Yes.
You kind of stuttered in that first time. I just wanted to make sure for...
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Apparently, we've only had one of our coworkers do it so far. And she says it really does smell like fish.
Okay.
So anyway, but yeah, so any kind of like market trends that we see, I was actually thinking about taking a trip to Korea and see what they're doing for all of their anti-aging stuff. Always make sure to stay current. So any conferences that I can attend, any networking events. So if it's a slow day for me as far as seeing patients goes, then I usually try and plug those holes with either shooting podcasts or being out networking, just seeing what our competition is doing. Because it's like, whatever y'all are doing, I want to do it better. Cocky.
And I mean, like, there's a reason why I reached out to you, because I know your consistency across your locations and what you're doing is top notch. Like, you really are running a very, very tight ship, and it is a lovely space to be in and to be around. So as somebody who does not go to these locations, if somebody asks me, like, where would you recommend? It's immediate to me that you would be the first choice, just because you have done everything you can to stay ahead of the curve and create an environment that is 100% cutting edge. So
I appreciate that.
What's a differentiator for your business? And for that, what problem does your product, your services, your business solve better than anyone else out there?
The whole like med spa experience from start to finish, I think we do that a lot better than other people. What I'm finding, and this is not just comparing people in like the med spa space, I think just coming into a small business and getting the true experience. So, you know, if I'm going into a boutique or if I'm going into a mom and pop restaurant, and the first person I see is they're on their phones. There's not any like genuine interaction anymore, right? And there's not any like warmth about. Yes, it's almost, what is it the thing about not being dead, being guys open doors for women. Chivalry is not dead. Well, customer service is dead for the most part. You know, I mean, just people aren't friendly anymore. I listened to a podcast this morning and it was like, 21 out of every 30 people are like stressed out and they're also lonely. It's like, well, yeah, because everybody's just doing stuff on their phones. All right, so let's talk about that. All right, so you come in the front door. I always make sure that we have a front desk person who is bubbly and friendly and outgoing and actually doesn't mind being at work, right? Sometimes people are like, you could tell that they're just there to collect their check. Then our IV techs are all experienced, are either, the paramedics, firefighters, they are nurses. And so they're very skilled, very seasoned in what they're doing. So, you're coming in here on your own accord to get a needle stuck in your arm. It better be done right? Same thing with our wellness consultants who see the weight loss patients. And, you were a patient of mine. So you see that each interaction that we have, and I pride myself on this, is that it's almost a mini counseling session. And I want to say I spend more time getting to know the clients as who you are as a person before we get into all of the clinical stuff, because that's just, that's just secondary.
That's a great way to look at it, and making sure that, you have the customer service, because people have options. And that's the thing. People expect, oh, well, you're in my business. If you don't like it, go someplace else. Okay, I will,
I don't like that.
Yeah. So
I don't like that mindset.
Well, let's move to the takeaway shot here. This segment, just some parting thoughts for you. So if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would it be?
I don't know.
One piece of advice for somebody who might be looking to start their own business.
To start their own business. You know what? I would say, first of all, don't rush it. You're going to make sure you have every single tool you need, right? Whether it's going to be your manager, your person who's going to run all of your operations. Make sure that everything is great with, your build out. Make sure that everything is great with your protocols, with your staffing. And, almost do like what restaurants do, and they have that like soft opening. Almost do that first with like friends and family before starting to open up your doors officially. Because you got to work out the bugs, because it only takes one. It only takes one bad review to destroy your business. It takes one complaint, and that spreads like wildfire. So I would say just don't be in a rush. Just do it right.
That is excellent advice. I think that, when people are starting out their business, they want to see as much movement as possible and as much advancement as possible. And I think being able to do the core elements of their business correctly and right, and operating it in a way that's repeatable and manageable,
instead of just rushing to get open.
Super important. Well, Stefanee, thank you very much for your time today. It has been such a pleasure having you on here. We really are thankful for the insight that you gave us. I know a lot of our listeners work in various different multi-location or franchise type operations, and some of the things you said were super insightful, and everything you said was very valued. So I appreciate you being a guest here on Hitting the Mark.
Thank you.
To our listeners out there, if you enjoyed this, subscribe, rate, share. Let's keep the conversation going, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Hitting the Mark.